reform, pension reform. I would like to be kind of liberated on pricing it's a very, very competitive market out there now. I would like more pricing freedom. I would drive, that would help us. I would like some of our unfunded mandates addressed with. And then within the organization, I would be able, without as much fanfare, to do a simple thing like, say, adhere to our schedules, right? And if we adhere to our schedules, that will improve performance. In transition, there would be an issue, but and we're seeing that recover right now. And once we get mail and packages moving at 97% with trucks that are moving at 97% on time, and we're driving costs out of the system by doing that. That's what I would do in my own business. And in my own business, I would grab new business revenue generating ideas, which we have here, that will drive billions of dollars of contribution to the cost to serve the American people. So we are in the beginning of having a plan. I'm an optimist about trying to pull this off.
I won't ask you your opinion on going from 6 days to 5 days, because that's really the job of Congress. But that's estimated to save $1 billion, $1.5 billion. And I think at the very least you have to do it. That could be a one-sentence bill that saves $1.5 billion over there and puts us on a better footing. I think you could go further and instead of assessing people more of a postal charge if they live 20 miles down a dirt road, simply just have less frequent delivery. And I think that alone would be tolerable. They'd still have personal service, but it would be less frequent. And I think you could make up for a large amount of your shortfall if you went actually below 5 days for some very rural areas. It's been contested, or it's been said that some of your competitors you use the post office for the last mile delivery, and that we don't charge them an adequate amount. They're sort of using the post office, the subsidized last mile delivery. Is that a problem? Do we charge your competitors enough when they get a package shipped to an area and then they use the post office for the last mile? Is that competitively bid? Do you think that's a problem? Should we do anything to fix that?
So Senator, if I may, when I first came here, when I first got this assignment, that was an obvious thing to me. Cut back 5 days. 4 days, whatever. And as I've worked through the process and researched and studied the organization, I think the 6-day delivery, the connection that the postal letter carrier has with the American people, that gives us this highly trusted brand, and where the economy is going in the future, I think that is probably our biggest strength to capitalize on. You talk about $1.5 billion to take a day away. I'm sitting here on a transportation schedule change that could get us $2 or $3 billion, all right, and improve service and improve the connection to the American people. So there are lots of
different. I believe that when I see it. I don't doubt you, but I do doubt government and the post office history. So what about the last mile delivery by your competitors? Are we getting a market rate from them?
We are studying the so I don't believe, my general view, I've been here 60 days and I've looked at that. We make broad-based deals across the whole country that deal with average rates. There are areas that we could push them up, and we're studying that. I don't believe that on the surface it's not it's reasonable business gaps that may exist is how I describe it.
All right. Well, thanks for trying to fix sort of a perhaps unfixable problem, and hang in there. And just the partisan barbs, hopefully they will be portrayed for what they are, partisan barbs that really aren't trying to fix anything, but they're just doing electoral politics by way of attacking you. So I apologize for that from our colleagues across the aisle, and wish you the best. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Senator Paul. Senator Romney, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Loud and clear. Go ahead.
Good. Thank you. Look, I want to begin by expressing my appreciation to the thousands upon thousands of letter carriers. And I also want to note as well that the postal workers have made our vote-by-mail system in Utah a reliable and very successful system, I think, for the entire nation. Mr. DeJoy, assuming as I do that you've been truthful in your testimony today, I can imagine how frustrating it is to be accused of political motives in your management responsibility. At the same time, of course, you can surely understand that there have been pretty good reasons for people to think that you or your colleagues are purposely acting to suppress voting, or that you're going to purposely prevent ballots from being counted. And any surprise at such concerns has to be tempered by the fact that the president has made repeated claims that mail-in voting will be fraudulent, and that he doesn't want to get more money to the post office because without more money, you can't have universal mail-in voting. Putting that aside, let me note that a great deal has been made of the fact that you contributed to President Trump's campaign. I would note that you also generously contributed to my campaign. So some people would say that you've contributed to both sides. Let me turn then and just note. Let me note that like others today, I state the obvious when I say that reliable, valid voting is essential to democracy here, and of course to other places around the world. And particularly with COVID still raging, the mail is essential to our voting system and therefore to democracy. Can you do you have a high degree of confidence that virtually all the ballots that would be mailed, let's say 7 days before an election, would actually be able to be received and counted? I mean, if people vote within 7 days of an election, are they highly confident? Are you highly confident that those ballots would then be received?
Extremely highly confident. We will scour every plant the day, each night leading up to election day. Very, very confident.
I very much appreciate that. That is a commitment. I hope the American people, as they see news reports of this hearing and of others that are going to come in the House, will underscore the fact that if they get their ballots in at least 7 days before an election, and probably even closer to the election than that, but the person who's running the post office is saying he is highly confident those ballots will be received by the various clerks in a timely way. That's key to us. On a separate topic, you mentioned that there are delays in the system, and that's of course to be expected. Are there greater delays in certain areas than others? So, for instance, are delays greater in rural areas than they are in the rest of the country?
Now, Senator, there's I think more urban areas where the coronavirus, the intimidation of the coronavirus, which scares our work. Employee availability average has dropped across the nation about 4%. But when you can go into some of these, what I would say, hot spots, Philadelphia, Detroit, they're as much as 25%. And we have routes. We have, like, Philadelphia has 750 routes, and we have days where we're short 200 carriers, and this can go on for a while. So that's where that's not the only contribution, but that's when the American people see 2-3 days that they haven't seen their carrier, that's an issue. And I would say I think there's at least 20 of those around in descending, level of consequence around the country.
Yeah, thank you. I will just stand by saying, like a number of my colleagues who've already expressed this point, I would very much look forward to seeing, and I'm not talking about by Sunday, I just mean at some point, seeing a plan developed by someone of your expertise in logistics for how we can get the post office to be more economically managed, but at the same time maintain a level of service which is essential for a functioning economy, and that's a real challenge. But as someone who's done what you've done throughout your career, I expect you to be up to the task. And like Senator Paul, I am anxious for there to be a recognition on the part of Congress that for us to demand certain service levels may require us to make legislative changes. So please feel welcome in our committee or in the House for letting us know what we need to do to make sure that you can do the job that we've asked you to do. Thank you, Mr. DeJoy. Appreciate your service.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Senator Romney. Senator Enzi.
Really appreciate you, Chairman Johnson, for holding this hearing. And I especially appreciate the Postmaster General coming to this hearing, knowing what kind of a target he will be. It's got to be really difficult only being in office 60 days and being expected to solve all of the problems of the Postal Service. It's been in a crisis for many years. Senator Collins used to head this committee when it wasn't called Homeland Security. It was Government Affairs, and she has worked on the post office all of that time and has a pretty good bill that she's worked on with Senator Feinstein that I hope people will take a look at. I'm not sure that anything can be done in a bipartisan way, particularly if one of the participants, Susan Collins, is up for election, because that might help her in her campaign. But she's been dedicated to this. It isn't a new idea that she had. It's something that she's been working on, and it has a lot of good ideas in it. I feel I really appreciate postal workers. In Wyoming, particularly, they're doing an outstanding job in spite of all of the difficulties of the pandemic. My father-in-law was a postal worker, and he was before the mail sorting machines, and he was pleased that he was able to memorize all the zip codes in the Sheridan area and handle the sorting. Of course, now local mail isn't postmarked locally. These are problems. I didn't realize that you personally deliver everything, that you personally fix the sorting machines. It was all news to me. And detailed analysis, how much detailed analysis can you do in 60 days? Particularly as I suspect that maybe people aren't wanting to share information with you. I hope that those postal workers out there that are dedicated will actually do something to help out on it. And of course, you've been accused of picking on veterans and picking on seniors. And I have to admit that I have felt picked on, not by you, but by the Postal Service recently. And I was glad to hear your explanation that you're having some difficulty with people to deliver the mail in light of the pandemic. I don't think a lot of people understand that. I didn't understand that. But I know that we had a package that we were expecting that was being traced, and we paid extra to have it traced. And we know it sat in the DC post office for 11 days before it was delivered to us. There have been days that our mail wasn't picked up. So I'm glad to know that the reason behind that, and to find out, this is the big surprise, it wasn't you. I thought you caused all of that. Mail sorting machines. In Wyoming, I don't think we sort any mail in Wyoming anymore. All those got moved to other centers. And I thought it was being done pretty efficiently in Wyoming. And what I also learned was that when you move a sorting center under the union requirements, if the people don't want to move, they don't have to move, and they still get paid. That's not going to save any money. I've asked for the analysis on some of these changes that have drastically affected Wyoming, and which, of course, were not done under you. It was done under previous administrations. And I know that they want to save money, but they've got to do some analysis that will actually save money. You used to be able to put money in a collection box, or put an envelope in a collection box for local delivery, and they got it the next day. Now, you put it in my community for local delivery. It goes to Denver first, gets sorted, and comes back to Gillette. Sometimes postmarked in Denver. That's not good management. And as an accountant, I know that postmarks make a difference. So I'm concerned. I have a lot of concerns, and I'm only pointing these out because I know that you only had 60 days to work on them and your plate was already full, but I'm trying to fill it a little bit more. And again, appreciate that that you're willing to take on this. I guess you'd have to call it an adventure, not a job, because it would be too tough as a job. But I know you've made some sacrifices to get to this. I hope that you will take a look at the urban areas. We've been picked on in the rural areas for a long time, but we have some really efficient people out here that are dealing with long distances and doing it very well. But when I go to my post office in DC, I find that there's only one person working at the counter, and if the person that comes up to the counter needs a box to mail it in, the boxes are not out where people can actually get them. So the person behind the counter has to leave and go get a box. And when they bring the box back, it still has to be sealed and addressed. And they don't move them over to the side to see if they can wait on the next customer. Everybody waits at social distancing. I've been to the post office before during my lunch hour and found that the postal workers decided that was their lunch hour as well. No business lets their employees sit down and eat in front of customers during their lunch hour. Well, enough of my, I guess, trying to defend you here, but
Senator, thank you. Senator, if I may, and thank you for the support. But if I may, the day I take the seat, as with any organization, the day you become the CEO, you're responsible for everything that goes on around you. And I have big enough shoulders to deal with that. But but more important about what you said in the beginning about legislation, not moving. We, the organization, needs to, and this board, we will move forward. We have to, because without legislation, without any assistance, we will run out of money. And 9 months, 12, we talk about a 633,000 person organization and 9 months worth of cash, and everybody thinks we're okay. That's outrageous thinking. And so we need to, we will, and that's kind of the difference now. We are moved, as I said in my opening remarks to the Board of Governors, we will do what we need to do to stay, to meet our operating objectives and get to self-sustaining, manner. So thank you.
I appreciate your willingness to be here, and I hope that you will take a look at the Collins-Feinstein bill and give us some analysis on that. And I recognize that you have to rely on postmasters across the United States of doing their job to manage their own business. So thank you for taking this job.
Thanks. Thank you, Senator Enzi. Senator Hawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. DeJoy, for being here. Let me see if I can ask a few questions to get started that will maybe help clear out some of this misinformation that we have heard repeated over and over and over again in the media, and some of it echoed today. Just to be clear, will USPS have enough cash on hand to support operating expenses through the November election?
Yes, sir.
Has the Postal Service seen an increase actually in total operating revenues in the most recently reported quarter relative to last year?
Yes, sir. Small, but yes.
Has the Postal Service seen its overall cash on hand position increase since the start of the pandemic in March to a level of approximately 15 billion? Is that right?
Somewhere between 14 and 15 billion. Yes.
So if I've understood your testimony correctly today, what I've heard you say and also what I've read in your written testimony, your testimony to us is that the Postal Service has the wherewithal, it has the resources, it has what it needs in order to deliver the mail safely and on time through the November election. Just to be clear about that, is that right?
So yes, Senator. Two separate things, though. To deliver on the election and cash to operate the business in the future are two separate things. But yes, we have plenty of cash to operate for the election.
Yeah, now just on that second point, since you bring it up, what's your estimate of the amount of additional assistance that you require as you look toward the future, past November and into the months and years to come?
I think we have had, so the biggest thing we need is legislative reform and the PRC to decide. But I estimated about $10 billion. We estimate about $10 billion cost on the COVID expense side. And what I would like to see is the note that we have negotiated with Treasury be used to get long-term financing to buy new vehicles.
Can I just ask you about that since you bring up the note from Treasury? So the CARES Act authorized $10 billion in borrowing authority. I understand that you reached USPS and the Treasury Department came to an agreement late last month in principle over what that would be, what that would look like. Can you give us a sense of when this $10 billion that was authorized, it's a loan, when this is likely to be made available to you, what you see its utility as? Just give us an update on where that stands.
So we have terms of agreement, and all we would need to do is when we request it, get a final document on it. But the terms have been agreed. I mean, the issue here with borrowing money is you need to know how you're going to pay it back. And at this particular point, we're evaluating that, but it is available to us pretty quickly.
And what do you anticipate using it for in the near term, assuming that you do avail yourselves of it?
There's pretty specific limitation. I cannot use it for capital, but I can use it to cover operating costs that are closely associated with COVID, and we can identify that pretty easily.
Now, you said just a second ago, when you first introduced the topic of the loan, you said that you would like additional authority to perhaps use the loan toward vehicles or as collateral for vehicles. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, so we have, you probably know, we have many 30-year-old vehicles and that we're desperately in need of new vehicles. The loan is not for capital. I would like to see the term extended and used as a capital type equipment loan to buy vehicles and other types of modernization efforts that we have. But longer term than 5 years.
Very good. And so that is part of the additional legislative reforms or authorizations you seek. Am I understanding you correctly?
Yes, sir. And
got it. Go ahead.
They've already been passed in a committee a couple of years ago, what we're looking for.
Right. Understood. Let's come back to some of the reforms that you had recently implemented. To what degree were any of the changes that you implemented over the summer a response to the OIG's recent findings?
I consider the OIG's recent findings, as we were doing our own analytics, I thought they were, for somebody new coming in, I thought they were a remarkable gift in terms of just laying out the two things with that. The system was out of balance. The transportation system, 40,000 trucks a day were running. Once you get below 90%, you can't depend on anything, right? So that was, and then there was a cost gift. So both things, when I came in here, looking at where the organization was headed financially, and what was the thing we could balance around, getting that transportation network aligned, which we will do, and saving $1 billion and a half to $2 billion, which we can reach for, was a Christmas present. I was elated.
Very good. Let me just ask you here. I see my time has almost expired, but let me just ask you in conclusion. I mean, as you probably know, my home state of Missouri, we have a very significant percentage of our population in rural areas. It's the part of the state that I'm from, where I grew up. It is absolutely vital to me that any Postal Service reform going forward continue to preserve the network of rural delivery service, that it preserves the existing delivery and post office box services that are available throughout rural Missouri. So can I just ask you, are you committed to protecting rural delivery and rural post offices for people like the folks I represent in Missouri and around the country?
So we have an unbelievable asset in our letter carriers reaching every American each day. And I commit to trying to strengthen that relationship across the country.
Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. DeJoy. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Hawley. Before I go to Senator Sinema, based on one of the questions in your response from Senator Hawley, you talked about the transportation system just being out of sync. In your written testimony, I just want to make sure that we're talking about the same thing here. You said your on-time trips went from 35,000 per day to 39,000 per day, which means schedule time of 89% improved to 97%. So is that what you're talking about? Your trucks actually leaving on time to get on their routes? And has that been part of the disruption as well? As if the letters aren't getting to those trucks in time, they may be left behind for next day's delivery. Can you just expand, just explain that, clarify that a little better?
Yes. So there, inside the plants, there's a production schedule for mail that would meet that's set up to meet a dispatch schedule for trucks that gets tied to a destination center for, let's just say, keep it simple, go right to the delivery units where carriers go out in the morning and carriers then could come back at night. This whole thing is an aligned schedule in theory on paper, and there's lots of imbalances that we're finding as we went through this process. But the big thing to try and get everything aligned around is that transportation schedule. And now we have taken that up, and all that mail that was going that was on that truck was also late mail. Right now, we have advanced the mail. We just some of the mail that coming off the processing lines. We found these imbalances, and we did not as great a job as we should in recovering for it, but we will. I'm seeing improvements right now. Once that comes together, mail will be moving around the country at 97% on time. And I'm very, very excited and committed to trying to do that. And that, again, enables us to balance the front end and the back and the delivery end of the system, and saves us all that money that you saw in the audit report. And it's in billions, not in millions.
So as a former manufacturer, I realize if you don't have a good process, you don't have a good product. So you came in and you identified some real process breakdowns. In a very short period of time, you made a pretty dramatic improvement in terms of on-time dispatch level, in terms of that transportation system. Now, you obviously have COVID, which is affecting our entire economy, and obviously it affects the postal system as well. So, basically what I'm hearing out of your testimony is the delivery delays are primarily being caused by the issues related to COVID, but the changes you made in terms of process, certainly in theory, if it hadn't already improved it already, is certainly going to set you up for improvement and cost reductions and cost savings in the future.
Yeah, so a substantial portion of our delays are related to COVID. I won't go as far as to not say that we had maybe a 4 or 5% hit on our service level for delayed all sorts of mail, marketing mail, everything, because it got stuck on a dock, and we're drastically bringing that down. And once that is aligned, we should have a smooth, running system at a much more high performance rate.
Okay, so some disruptions do the change, but again, those changes are necessary to try cost savings and improvement in the future.
This is very doable. So FedEx and UPS do it.
Okay, great. Senator Sinema.
Thank you, Chairman, for holding this important hearing, and I want to thank Postmaster General DeJoy for joining us today. The U.S. Postal Service has always been a critical lifeline for communities across Arizona and the entire nation. And during this pandemic, it's even more true. Over the past week, my office has heard from over 18,000 Arizonans about the importance of the Postal Service. Arizonans want to ensure the Postal Service will continue to deliver prescription drugs, assist small businesses, and support their right to vote. Arizona has led the way on safe and secure mail-in voting for years. The Postal Service must act to support our upcoming election, especially since we will see increases in vote by mail due to the pandemic. But our hearing today shouldn't just be about election mail. My constituents have also shared stories about prescriptions that took so long to arrive, they worry whether the medication is spoiled. Others are concerned their small business will go under without reliable postal service, or that rent checks and bill payments now take a week longer to reach their destination than just a few months ago. So, Mr. DeJoy, I'm pleased that you heeded requests from me and my colleagues to answer questions about the operational services the Postal Service is making. It's critical that you and your team demonstrate a commitment to protecting the ability of customers to get the service they rely on every day. And successfully communicating with Congress, stakeholders, and election officials is a big part of that effort. So for my first question, in Arizona, we expect 85 to 90% of the electorate to vote by mail this general election. That's approximately 2.4 million ballots moving through the postal network in Arizona in the weeks before the election. Given that significant volume, unexpected challenges will certainly arise and adjustments will need to be made. I've been working closely with the Arizona Secretary of State's office to ensure that they and other local election officials get their questions answered regarding mail issues so that we can have fair elections. And I'm going to continue to share the full range of questions that my office receives with you and your team. And of course, their top concern is the timely delivery of ballots. So will local postal managers be authorized to make decisions and have postal employees make extra trips or late trips, work overtime in order to deliver ballots to ensure that plants and post offices don't fall behind in processing election mail?
Yes, ma'am. Effective October 1st, we will have redundant resources and liberalization and aggressive efforts to make sure everything is moving and flowing timely.
I appreciate that. Could you tell me what steps your office is taking to communicate this policy to postal managers, election officials, stakeholders, and to the public in Arizona so everyone feels confident that citizens have fair access to voting by mail?
Yes, ma'am. In general, I think we started back in February. We've reached out. We've had over 50,000 contacts with the election officials around the country. As you know, we've sent a number of letters. We are making videos that will go online with the union leadership and myself to communicate out our commitment, to this, and we continue to work with the state boards and our board. We decided to put together a bipartisan committee on the board to kind of oversee everything that we're going to be doing. So we are emphasizing. In fact, I think in September we're going to send a letter to every American with what our process is going out to every American citizen. So I think I feel good. I appreciate the question, and I feel good about what the whole organization, from the board of directors down to our letter carriers and plant personnel. We're very, very proud of what we're doing, and we're going to deliver for the American people.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Postal processing plants are the critical piece to ensure that everyday mail arrives in a timely fashion and that all the votes are counted. And so we want to make sure those processing plant operations remain smooth and efficient. Earlier this week in your announcement, you said you would not close any postal processing facilities before the election. But I don't think you specifically ruled out consolidations of processing plants. So my question is the Postal Service planning to modify or reduce capacity at any postal processing facilities before the election? And if so, what specific steps are you taking to ensure that the Postal Service can continue to meet service standards for both election and regular mail in the communities served by those facilities?
Senator, I promise you, we are not making any changes until after the election.
I appreciate that. That was a very concise and direct answer. I love it. As you know, I recently wrote to you regarding the Cherry Bell processing plant in Tucson. It's very important to mail service in that community and throughout Arizona. If the Postal Service considers consolidations or closures of processing facilities in the future, would you require new area mail processing studies for any impacted facility or other similar analysis before moving forward with a consolidation or a closure?
Thank you, Senator. There is and I'm not totally familiar with it, but there is a whole process that a pretty detailed process that we need to go through before we close a facility. And I'd be, if that, we'll take that down. If that facility ever gets on that, I'll make sure we reach out to you in advance and let you know. But there is a whole public awareness process, a detailed analysis as to how the mail is going to be processed. It's not an easy thing to do. But we have it marked down, and we'll keep you posted if that ever gets on our list of interested locations.
I appreciate that. Just for your awareness, the original A&P for Cherry Belle was done in 2011. And as you're probably aware, we've had very significant population growth throughout Arizona since then. So we want to make sure that decisions are made with up-to-date data. And so I'll follow up with you soon about this topic, because this is very important for Arizona, and it's very important for Southern Arizona in particular. Mr. Chairman, go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Joy.
You just said, look forward to speaking to you about it.
Thank you. I know my time is almost done. The last thing I'll just say is, when you next consider operational changes, I'd ask you to take into account the negative customer experiences that folks have shared with us, like spoiled medicine or missing rent checks. We've been getting more complaints about service getting worse since some of these most recent changes. We ask that you would take into account these negative customer experiences when making decisions in the future. And my team is happy to share some of those direct experiences with you.
Thank you for your guidance, ma'am. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for being with us today. And Mr. Chairman, thank you for this opportunity, and I yield back.
Well, thank you, Senator Sinema. Well, but let me just, again, thank you, Mr. Postmaster General, for appearing here on pretty short notice and subjecting yourself to this hearing process. Just to quick summarize a few things we heard today. Obviously, the postal system is every bit as affected by COVID as the rest of this nation. Has been economically devastating. So I think for anybody to assume that service would maintain its high level of standards when we're in the midst of a pandemic, I think is quite unrealistic. As you've stated, I think the operational changes that you implemented are designed for long-term improvement, but they created some disruptions as well. But again, coming from a manufacturing background, I realize you have to have a good process. Things have to run on time, and you recognize that as well. So I'm highly supportive of those efforts. I think that should be commended, not condemned. As I stated, there's no doubt there have been some unusual delays, COVID, some of these operational changes, but as I check with our constituent service folks, what they are also finding is the high volume of calls concerning postal complaints. The vast majority seem very highly scripted, like this could be a very well-organized effort, which doesn't surprise me in the slightest. There are fundraising emails from Senate candidates and Senate and the Democrat Senatorial Committee dating back as far as April, complaining about this postal issue. So I have no doubt the Democrats are ginning these issues and these problems up into something that it's not. A very false narrative, as I said, designed to extract a political advantage. And Mr. Postmaster General, I'm just very sorry that you are on the targeting end of this political hit piece. I think it's very unfortunate. It's very tragic. This is, as somebody else pointed out, this is part of the problem why we've not had postal reform, is how people will take advantage of it. And again, the expectations, I appreciated Senator Ensley's very common sense a statement of a number of different facts. You've only been on the job 60 days. You've got a great background. I truly appreciate your willingness to serve this role. As you heard from the committee, we truly appreciate the hard work of the men and women of the U.S. Postal Service doing a good job delivering our mail. But we need reforms moving forward. So we might have an opportunity here. There may be another COVID relief package. It probably will include something for postal. So if there's going to be dollars allocated, what I'm certainly asking you for is the information, the data, and the suggestions for true reforms. I think that's what's always been lacking as I've been in this position in terms of postal reform. It's always a taxpayer bailout absent of the types of reforms that we need to also make legislatively. So I really look for your guidance. I look for your data. It's another real shortcoming from my dealing with the U.S. Postal Service here. We just don't get the data that I think we really need to enact effective legislation. I'd like to actually enact effective legislation that's going to require cooperation with you and the postal workers. So again, thank you for your service. Thank you for stepping in this role. I apologize for the fact that you become a target in a political hit job. It's very unfortunate. But with that,
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, certainly.
Would you yield to me for a minute or two, please?
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks so much. As you may recall, Mr. Chairman, one of our colleagues, late Tom Colbert, and I worked for years on major changes in the Postal Service, real reforms. And we've done that. We've developed bipartisan consensus around that. And we can do that again. Among the things that we've heard here today, there's an interest in Medicare integration. I think we ought to look at that. There's an acknowledgement that there need to be major investments in the fleet, the postal fleet. The average age of the fleet of postal vehicles, 27 years old. There are investments that need to be made for additional modern package processing equipment in our distribution centers across the country. And I think there's the ability to come up with a bipartisan consensus on how to help the Postal Service not just get through a pandemic, but be relevant and efficient and vibrant in the years to come. The secret to vibrant democracy, the 2 C's, communicate and compromise. And with all due respect to our Postmaster General, I'm pretty good at bipartisan compromise. I reached out to you when you were just initially selected by the Postal Board of Governors. And then later on, I tried to reach you again and again for weeks and couldn't even get a call back. And I wasn't the only one. You got to be willing to communicate. You got to be willing to communicate. There's some people in the administration who do a great job at that. Bob Lighthizer, a trade representative, is one. Mnuchin, Secretary of Treasury, is one. And I would urge you to emulate them. This is a shared responsibility. It's not on the post office. It's not on the men and women who work at the postal service. It's not on the Board of Governors or on you as a postmaster. It's on us as well. This is a shared responsibility. Our country is counting on us, and we're counting on a democracy. Last thing I'll mention, I go back to Ben Franklin, first Postmaster General. Remember what he said coming out of that building at the end of the Constitutional Convention when they said, "What have you done here? What have you created?" And he said, "A republic, if we can keep it. A republic, if we can keep it." And one of the keys to keeping it is, frankly, a vibrant postal service and the ability for people to vote, Democrat, Republican, or whatever, for people to cast their votes and know they're going to be counted. That's critical. We've got a president, sadly, who wants to undermine, underfund the Postal Service, and hopefully undermine the ability to vote by mail. That's just unacceptable. Hopefully we can do better than that. And I commit for myself, some of my colleagues to try to do just that. Do better. We can always do that. In order to form a more perfect union, we can do better.
Mr. Chairman, if I could say a few comments too, just briefly.
Senator Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Postmaster DeJoy, I want to take an opportunity to thank you as well for appearing before us so willingly and certainly on very short notice. But I also want to be very clear about what I've been hearing, and I think you've heard from my members, and just to counter a little bit of what the chairman said. These are real concerns that I'm hearing. These are not manufactured. These are people who are coming forward, talking about delays, talking about medicine that's not available for them, talking about how I have, as I shared the story with an individual who did, because of the lack of medicine, skipped doses and was actually hospitalized. Those are very real. And when I hear those kinds of stories, we stand up. That's my job. It's the job of every senator here to stand up and for our constituents, for the people back home who are being hurt, and make sure that their voice is heard. That's what this is about. It's about making sure people's voices are heard. And that is what this hearing's about. This is why we're standing up and making sure the Postal Service does what they have done with incredible integrity and professionalism for 245 years. We want to make sure that that standard continues going forward. I fully appreciate that the COVID has created significant problems for the Postal Service, but I won't show my chart again. But if you look at the chart, the service was there through a lot of the pandemic. It's just been in the middle of July where you see it dropping off dramatically. The COVID's been with us since March, but we've seen a dramatic drop since mid-July, which is the time when I got all of those communications, and my colleagues have been getting those communications. They're not manufactured. These are real people.
Some of them certainly are.
So I just want to be clear about that. So, Mr. Postmaster DeJoy, you answered some of our questions today, and I thank you for that. But there's still many, many left that are unanswered. And I think we all look forward to seeing the documents that we have requested so we can do our oversight function, deliver to us in a timely fashion. I appreciate your willingness to do that. I'm going to continue my investigation of the recent delays and Postal Service practices that have been put in place. And I urge you and your staff to be fully forthcoming with any additional requests. That kind of transparency is critically important in this job. I know you have a very hard job. And frankly, I think you've made it harder on yourself because of the lack of transparency that we have seen here these last few weeks. So in the coming weeks, Congress certainly must provide Postal Service with the resources and the oversight that you need to reliably deliver mail for the American people, but not just through this election. We have to make sure we get through the election. We've got to get through the pandemic. And we want to make sure we put the Postal Service on sound financial footing to last for another 245 years and beyond. So thank you again, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator.
Okay, thanks, Senator Peters. And again, I am in no way, shape, or form denying that many of these complaints are absolutely genuine, and we take these seriously and help our constituents. But there's also no doubt that a lot of this is being ginned up. Many of those complaints are highly scripted, and it's being done for political purpose. I mean, there's absolutely no doubt about that. We have a new Postmaster General who's been in the office less than 70 days. You know, from my standpoint, I think the first thing he needed to do is get up, start the job, roll up his shirt sleeves, and get to work and try and figure out what he needs to do to reform the process. So I'm looking forward to a totally transparent process here. I'm looking to separate the fact from the fiction, and my problem is there's a lot of fiction, a lot of false narrative being ginned up by Democrats and the left right now. So I want the data as well. Mr. Postmaster General, I'm sure you will work with us in the future, and that's what I'm basically giving you the opportunity to do. There's a possibility for a postal reform bill, even in this next COVID relief package, if there is one. So let's work in good faith. Thank you again for your service. Thank the men and women of the United States Postal Service for their service as well. The hearing record will remain open for 15 days until September 3rd at 5 p.m. for the submission of statements and questions for the record. This hearing is adjourned.
Thank you.